Tennessee still has income tax on things like investments, capital gains, but they have no income tax on W-2 income.
Right? They have a personal property tax, right? Is that true?
Yes, I think so, but everybody does.
In one form or another, right?
Right. Okay. It's 4 o'clock. I'll call to order this meeting of the, excuse me, Ojai Valley Sanitary District Personnel Committee for September 3rd, 2024. We don't have any absent directors, so we don't need any CB 2449 requests. How about public comment? Anything written or electronic?
No, I have nothing.
Some staff on.
I don't think we have any public comment.
Don't see any raised hands. Okay, let's move on then to item 4, recruitment update. This is everything short of permanent general manager, right?
Yes, so this would be recruitment in the purview of staff versus the board. So this is a revisit of an agenda item that was on for August 6th, where we discussed some challenges we're having in recruitment. The district currently has 5 vacancies, including the general manager, so 4 regular staff vacancies. We have gone out for recruitment for 3 of the 4. One of those 3 we've gone out for multiple times, ended up with the same nominal results each time. So we have been multiple times unsuccessful. We've cast our net quite wide in our recruitment. So we've been on all of the major industry recruiting job boards. We posted on ones that we normally wouldn't post on, just in the event that perhaps somebody that's in a more technical role has maybe kiddos or neighbors or something that wants something a little more entry level in comparison to what is normally advertised on there. We've really been aggressive with our recruitment and have yielded no amazing results with that. Statistically, most agencies are somewhere in the 15 to 20% vacancy rate. That is included the County of Ventura and local agencies. All looking for very, very similar skill sets, if not the exact same positions that we have vacant. And so the challenge is not unique to the district. It is part of the employment climate right now. We did interview for a senior treatment plant operator 4 position. So we had 2 candidates that met the minimum qualifications for that. We did interview. We made our highest and best offer to one candidate who we are still negotiating a conditional offer. So there were very distinct things that they had questions about. So we've answered those. They were interested in the board action that was going to be taken at recent meetings. So they wanted to wait for those. They're currently on vacation for a week with their current employer. And so we will get probably final answer within the next week, whether they will actually accept our offer and we can finish the pre-employment items. I will say that this is probably the most in-depth sort of analysis that anybody's ever done coming to work here. They had very, very detailed questions. So they definitely were analyzing every aspect of benefits, retirement calculations and formulas, organizational structure, on-call demands. So not only demands monetarily, but demands on their time. They watched some board meetings. I mean, people are making solid decisions from, very comprehensive sort of aspect of any agency, it appears. So that's refreshing. That people are making educated decisions, but it also sort of, I think, really does demonstrate what's going on in the employment industry. That the people that are looking are only going to go for something that's better, that meets exactly what they need, and they're not going to leave anything on the table in order to come somewhere. So that was definitely what was happening. So we'll see on that. The other ones remain vacant.
Can I ask some questions on that one? So there were 2 good candidates, or?
There were 2 candidates that met the criteria to be interviewed, that met the minimum qualifications.
Those 2 you picked over the top one.
Hmm.
does that person have an understanding and a comprehension that that position is going to become when Bradshaw retires, he's going to move up into that position?
Yeah, we were very clear. That is contingent of their employment here, and they'll sign an agreement that'll be drafted by LCW stating that they agree when delegated to take on that role, and that is a contingency of remaining employed here. So, and they were completely aware. This particular position, it is highly unlikely someone would have applied without that being some career goal for them, the way the description is written. So people were more excited about that as a possibility, and have sort of definitely laid the tracks in their sort of professional growth and development, that ultimately being something that they want to do. And so we have no concerns with that.
Okay, now it's Scott's first day on the job, so I'm sure he hasn't had a chance to dig into it, but I would just suggest at some point when the time is appropriate, you get Scott involved in that process in whatever way is appropriate.
So here we are with these as sort of our reality, which seem to be the reality of the industry as a whole. I think it's important, since people are actually reviewing, in depth our benefits, that we review all of the things that came out of the compensation study as far as total compensation. That we sort of, like I said, don't leave anything on the table, that the board explores the remaining items which are next on the agenda as far as benefits are concerned. As I stated the last time I presented this, it is most definitely a trend. Employers are buying their way into the market to get a competitive advantage. There's no doubt that that is happening. There are signing bonuses. We've seen agencies go post the first time at 8% above what we're offering, only to post again unsuccessfully with another 10%. They're being generous with their cost of living. I mean, they're trying to position themselves to essentially get the exact same people we're looking for. It is what it is. I mean, so essentially it's up to the board to decide how they want to react to that. But we're all looking for the same people in the same positions.
Your staff report says each position only received 2 or 3 qualified applicants.
That is correct.
With the senior treatment plant operator, you've actually entered negotiations with one.
Correct.
Have you done that with any applicant for the other 2 positions?
No, the other positions, the number of the total number of applicants was very, very small. And the number of qualified applicants was so small that they weren't even as qualified as we would normally get, period. Minimally qualified at best. I would have not recommended interviewing for those positions. I do not consider that a competitive recruitment at all.
Okay, so they met minimum requirements, but were not what you felt you should be trying to hire.
Yes, when I say they met minimum requirements, they met minimum requirements to screen through to say they actually even met the minimum qualifications for it. On a normal recruitment, we would not have interviewed those people in comparison to other people that would have applied. There were some very significant areas of experience or skills that they did not have that would have been very taxing on staff to try to develop those over time. That are pretty much at the top of the necessity list as far as someone being able to perform those tasks or have that knowledge base. Those would not be the ones I would be sacrificing if I was choosing qualifications that they did not have.
Yeah. Okay, it's hard then to opine that they were qualified applicants.
That is an accurate statement.
Okay.
And it's just interesting to know that we didn't have this once, but twice. As we advertised for it twice and had the same results.
Yeah.
How does our
Second one.
We opened up wider.
Yeah, on the second one.
how does our total compensation package compare, say, to the county? Recognize it's 2 different retirement systems, but otherwise.
I don't think the county is where you're actually going to be gaining or losing people. The county is not positioned competitively in this market at all. I would not consider that a competing agency for employees. I think if you're choosing from if you're in an employment market that's challenging, that is not where those employees are going to go. They're already priced very, very below market.
Well, my thought was if they're call it a less than optimum
Correct.
recruiting organization at the moment, wouldn't that be a good place to go look for people? If there are qualified people there, they're probably not getting the same total compensation as they would here.
Well, I guess it depends on how you play the game. Because I guess if you wanted to do it that way and actually start directly trying to recruit from places for employers, it's not the greatest relationship building strategy. To be honest with you, and if you were going to do
Everybody's in poaching mode right now.
if you were going to do that, that wouldn't be where I would go. As far as places that develop very strong, skilled employees, that wouldn't be where I would go to try to poach employees, if you will. I mean, if we're going to go into poaching mode, that wouldn't be where I would poach from.
Okay, feels like everybody's in poaching mode
Yeah.
right now.
And they're privy to the job announcement as well, so.
Yeah.
they-
I mean, in our,
Anybody could have applied.
Applications as well.
I mean, our staff get calls all the time. I mean, people are in poaching mode. I mean, that is the reality of it. We just choose to not play the game that way as management. Now to our staff, be like, hey, this is an awesome place to work or this or that when they know we have a recruitment up. That's how a lot of people apply here. But no, we don't generally start directly calling people.
I personally would rather not see that happen. It's,
We need those allies at certain points in time, so.
Okay,
I hate to put us at a disadvantage. You know, I mean, if everybody else is poaching, I guess you're saying, Allison, that management has made a decision, the conscious decision that we're not gonna take steps that would be perceived as poaching by other agencies.
I don't really think we're in a position to offer enough to actually do that. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, we're at market. Our salary schedule is the representation of market, and you already have employers that you would be trying to snag employees from that are already far above market now, trying to be competitively placed to do the same thing. I don't know that we're actually in a position to offer more than what they are offering.
But isn't that a board policy, what we offer, our
Yes, it
what we
is.
want to be at? I mean,
That's basically why we're having the conversation.
That's
Part of it.
It's because it's the policy. I mean, we can only recruit against the policy that's set, which our salary and benefits is a policy that the board has set. And so now when we face these challenges, it becomes the time to essentially evaluate the policy and decide if you want to be more generous with the policy in hopes of enticing folks to essentially apply and come here, or if we want to wait it out, whatever that looks like, I don't know. You know, at the expense of staff. I mean, because like I said, there are staff here that have been doing one of these vacant positions for 2 years. So, I mean, I think we've hit the point where, you know, it's a really nice favor and sort of leveraging of skills, but it's become an unreasonable expectation.
I'm one of those old fashioned people that like reading a newspaper. Many times I would open the Ventura County Star and see that quarter page ad, Ohio Valley Sanitary District. Over and over and over again, you're advertising. I'm going to myself, what gives, you know? Why aren't we filling these positions? So, you know, we have Scott here today. Just want to say, Scott, just for the record, I think hiring good people is going to be the biggest challenge that we have going forward. I don't know how we're going to do it, but got some ideas to throw out there when the time is right. But I wonder if we don't need to go into some kind of poaching mode or somehow, if this is poaching mode and this is where we are now, maybe split the difference somehow, be half into poaching mode. You know, and there's some other things we can do too, like, you know, when the pool isn't large enough, you enlarge the pool. I got some ideas on that too. Why don't
Yes.
we go ahead and proceed? I just wanted to state that I'm in favor of having a very attractive place to work. And I understand you can't just give that only to new people coming in. You can't have two levels of employees, new ones that you had to steal from other agencies. And they make so much more than the regular employees who've been loyal all these years to us. So,
Well, I saw them do that at Rockwell and it destroyed the division I was in. Called it salary compression. Because the new ones coming in were making more than journeyman, if you will. I mean, it's all aerospace, but the principle holds. You
that
can't,
can be very destructive, especially in a public agency setting where everybody's salary is public record. My first job out of college was private industry, and I had no idea what anybody else made. And so they could play all kinds of games with us, and we were happy as clams. But here, everybody knows what everybody else makes, and that.
and we can't, in my opinion, start increasing the salary scales to target these particular jobs.
No,
You either pay everybody better or nobody.
yeah, so our salary schedule is representative of each classification in the market. Some of them are relative to each other. So you would be essentially messing up the entire relationship between certain positions when you did that in our salary schedule. So definitely the recommendation, if you choose to address the salary schedule, is to address the salary schedule as a whole. Some statistics is if you shift the salary schedule 10%, you will potentially be more competitive in the market. I won't say that you're going to be amazingly competitive in the market, given that we've seen people increase their salary schedule by 20% over the course of even just 6 months trying to recruit. But you will also correct your disproportionality of the folks that are off the scale. So there are two solutions to that because you shift the whole thing. And then at least you've created your own OVSD market that now includes all of your employees. And so that's one idea. So if you want just a number thrown out, that one will solve two problems at one time potentially.
What's the total? I don't have the balance sheet here right now, but the income statement, what's the total salary cost for the district right now? 3 million?
Yes, that's about what it is. It's a little over 3 million. Granted, we have a lot of vacancies, so our current cost now is significantly less. Like I said, the budget impact will come in subsequent years, not really this year as much. But yes, it's approximately 315,000 to shift the salary grid 10%.
Isn't that amazing that we spent this money to do this survey and it's already outdated before we even start using it?
I don't think, you know what, I don't think it's outdated necessarily. I just think that you have some very significant factors that came after the fact. So our study, it takes so long. And so one of the goals is to use like for like salary data for everybody. So that was 2023 data because everybody had already passed their COLAs. Everybody's data was available and no one was in sort of mid evaluation. What happened in just that short amount of time is you had a lot of, I think, shifts in the industry, and a lot of retirements that were bound to come. I think you finally are starting to see the effects of people coming into the industry in the sort of pause of COVID. And so I think it just naturally became a different employment market. There are some economic factors that make people not want to move also that sort of play into that. That I think that you just are realizing some anomalies that just coincidentally came after we completed that. Because I think it's an accurate representation, but I think that you have some responses in the market to the challenges people are having that are skewing what the market looks like, which happens all the time. I mean, I can probably predict to you even 5 years from now what positions will be skewed at that time based on competitiveness in the market, because there's ones that are always in demand. So they're always going to be sort of responding to those. I think overall we're seeing a response to them. You know, I
also had 2 big years of inflation.
Correct. You know, and everybody passes, like I said, their CPI data they use at different points in time. So those are always going to be a little off. I think the higher rate of inflation makes them a little bit but they're as like for like as possible. So for example, like, I think one of the factors as to why you're getting a large response for your general manager recruitment is that you've already positioned yourself 7% at least. If you look at the data for the salaries that were used by CPS, if you take out the two that are really not comparables, you've actually placed yourself 34% above market. So you are going to get a lot of applicants.
I'd like to respond to Bill's suggestion. I think that, I don't think of the salary survey as being obsolete. I see it as providing a baseline, kind of a point of departure.
It's overtaken by events.
It's overtaken by events, but it's still a baseline. It gives us a point of departure for where we're gonna go from here. We know we're gonna go up probably, but it gives us a good baseline to start from.
We had a policy, I think, many years ago that put us 20% above median. When they did this was just the decision of the board.
So there are a lot of districts that have, and a lot of public agencies that
Follow up,
have.
that's a follow-up question to that. Well, whatever happened to that policy? We're not at it now, are we?
I don't know. I don't even remember when it went away or what happened. You must have been around when
I haven't
20 years ago or something like that.
I haven't seen it. A lot of agencies have pay and COLA policies in place, and it essentially dictates a whole number of factors of how they're going to decide on things. One of them is when they conclude a compensation study, they automatically have predetermined to essentially be 20% above market or 15% above market, just to automatically say, this is what market looks like. We want to automatically be X amount competitive, and they shift it right at that time upon adoption. And so that is on my list of things for the general manager, is to really look at a pay and COLA policy, et cetera, so that we don't run into the problems with how to address people that are off the grid, that we automatically decide as a district where we want to be competitively in the employment market. It will say exactly what point in time and what data source we use for our CPI. So none of those things become subjective conversations every time we talk about them, unless the board as a whole decides to deviate from the policy that they've set. But at least it allows some sort of guiding conversation as far as this was decided on as sort of your benchmark at one point in time and set in policy. And the district currently does not have anything of that sort. So we make these sort of on the fly, situationally.
I'm wondering about the overall financial health of the district. Know that the Pepsi plant closed, but what happened to those 450 capacity units is that the income went down by a quarter. It didn't go down by 100%.
Yeah, so they paid their 6167 for 450 capacity units. It is an ongoing topic of conversation, what it is that they're going to do with those 450 capacity units. Probably quarterly, we have a conversation with them and about what their long-term plan is for that. They don't know at this time, but that could get worse depending on if they ultimately decide to have that just as a storage facility and a shipping location, they likely will not keep the 450 PUs.
Yeah.
It did buy them very cheap though.
Yeah,
$800.
costing them a lot of money.
Oh, it is.
Their greatest expenses for that particular location in its current use. So
But the trade-in value of at least most of those 450 is not very big.
no, it's the carrying cost of them though.
So when is it appropriate? Just looking at the agenda. Alice and I talked to you about a couple items I wanted to talk about today. Where we put those in.
Those are on the next agenda item because I think those come to play with total compensation and benefits. It can wrap into this one if you want to talk about something like that. We can essentially bulk them all together if we want.
We have kind of morphed into item 5.
And you can talk to them as a whole, because it really does, they do impact each other and they do have, a monetary cost for consideration. So if you want to bring up your items now, you can.
Okay,
I think to wrap up item 4, the answer is we're still trying, but it's a seller's market. We're not making much headway.
Yeah, and we've stopped trying just because we don't really know where to go from here. I mean, we certainly can, but it comes at quite recruitment is quite an expense for us, just the advertising and everything like that. It's runs about $2,500 to $3,000 every time we recruit for a position. The advertising costs are very expensive.
So 1% of the cost of a 10% increase across the board.
I guess if you look at it that way.
We can remain hopeful that this person that we're communicating with now is going to come through. for
We
us.
are definitely hopeful.
And, but if that doesn't happen, then we may have future personnel committee meetings to try and figure out what change we're gonna make. And we may discuss some topics today, but we're probably not gonna come to a decision.
I think one thing that we need here is perhaps more of a sense of urgency with regard to recruitment.
Yes, absolutely, I agree.
And you're really down, I think, to a bad place in negotiations. If you and somebody else are negotiating and there's two major issues, you can trade one off against the other. It sounds like we've got one major issue. That's total compensation. So there's going to be winners and losers, and there's only one issue that's being discussed. I had this selling a law enforcement software package for the city of Asheville, North Carolina. And they said, we really like your product, but we like this other guy's price. Could you meet his price? And I said, no. If I just give in to that, you'll never trust me again. No wonder if you asked for enough. And I can't afford it. But that was the only one issue. They eventually bought from us at a higher price, by the way. But I think we're at the point where we as a committee have to make some recommendations to the board as a whole as to what to do about total compensation. Because it's clear, at least to me, that what we're offering right now is at the lower end of the market. Nobody's biting much.
Well, I had a couple ideas, and I'll talk about, you know, you can look at overall compensation, but in my mind, the big problem that we have hiring new people is getting people into this area because they look at the housing prices here, and the housing prices are a killer.
Yes,
We talked about a little bit of our last personnel committee meeting, 800 square foot house selling for $1 million. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, we can throw money at the problem by increasing everybody's compensation, or it's an idea that it doesn't originate with me. I overheard it from somebody, but it is to offer new employees a housing allowance. I'm not sure the legal limits are on a housing allowance. That, you know, for example, some of the questions I have about doing a housing allowance, I mean, would that have to be considered a PERS benefit for PERS purposes? So we'd be paying retirement benefits for something that we're trying to focus money on a problem, which is there's housing costs are too high. So can we pay someone to help subsidize their rent or their mortgage and not have that part of their PERS benefits that would increase? It's a 50-year commitment to continue paying that housing allowance because even after the house is long since bought and sold. So I just wanted to just talk to you guys about it and see if there's any support for because we could theoretically come up with and I haven't come up with a policy even in my head yet, but we could have it where there would be eligibility requirements. For instance, people that live outside of Ventura County might be eligible. If you already live here, you wouldn't be eligible for a housing allowance. Whether that would cause resentment or not, I don't know. But what do you guys think about the idea of a housing allowance? A new employee.
I would prefer the idea of a loan. get people a down payment house or increase their down payment. But a housing allowance is just cash.
It is cash, but it depends on how,
And it looks, I think, everybody like extra pay. It is in fact cash. It looks like somebody just got a big salary bump for being new.
And it
It's
would-
income, pay taxes on it, outside the salary scale. But a loan could be, a loan with a 5 or 10 year bullet might work, or with a sliding scale. But that could, I think, help get people over the hump of moving into the area without distorting the salary
because
of the entire staff.
see the benefit of a housing allowance, at least hypothetically, is that you put the money where you need it the most, which is to help people with their housing costs.
Mhm.
And you don't have to give it to everybody. You'd have eligibility requirements. And
What would they sound like?
it would apply to people
New.
that lived beyond 30-minute drive from the office, allow them to move into the area. There might be eligibility. I don't know if this is legal, and if it's not, I don't want to recommend anything that's not perfectly copacetic. I just don't know what the laws are. We don't have our attorney here today. But for instance, you might make eligibility based on size of family. Because people with bigger families need more housing than someone who's single. So that might also increase your eligibility. And I don't know. I haven't thought it through, guys. Is there any hope of an idea here?
I'd like to play devil's advocate slightly on that a little bit.
Feel free.
People here who work multiple jobs to be able to afford to live here that already work here. So I think that they would have, I think that they would be, there would be some discontent offering that to new employees. Cause like I said, we have people who leave here at 5 o'clock and go and work somewhere else till like 10 or 11.
Really?
So to be able to afford to live here. And so it's one of those things where it's like the struggle is real for everybody here, not just the people that we're trying to get to come here.
And I think another problem I see is where do we draw the line? At what point do we stop giving you that assistance?
Well, it might be like a 5-year thing for new employees, 5 or 10 years. And by then it's assumed. I don't know, I'm trying to focus the money on where it's most needed. The basic idea, but if the law, in my mind, if the law says you have to treat that as a PERS benefit and it adds to your retirement, then you just added a huge chunk of money to your costs.
Yeah, I don't.
It probably would lose its benefits.
Don't know about that. I think it's just like a fringe benefit. It's a taxable lump sum of some sort. But like I said, there may be alternate rules that apply to something when you use it for housing for your employees. I don't actually know that. I've never worked for an agency that has offered that.
And I mean, could that be construed as a gift of public funds?
Well, it's not exactly a gift. It's quid pro quo. You're hiring somebody, you want someone to be employed here, you demand that they be within, you might make it limited to people who have to respond to emergencies, so it wouldn't apply to an accountant, but it might apply to an operator 2 or 3 because they have to be within a certain distance of the plant. Well, let me just throw that out there as an idea.
Well, Bradshaw, do all of the collection system and treatment plant folks have this response time requirement on them?
Yes.
My impression was they did.
Yeah, with the exception of the tech. All the
Okay.
treatment operators and collection operators do rotate through the on-call schedule and are required to respond.
Yeah.
So housing costs a critical item for our staff.
Well, I think that burden is on all the staff. Already here, already burdened with the cost of housing and the current economic state and all the impacts they've experienced over the last couple of years. Yeah, I'd say they're all burdened by that. That's the biggest expenses, right?
I don't really know the distribution amongst our staff of what their home ownership is. Is home ownership a high fraction, a medium fraction?
It's a high fraction.
They all buy their homes 40 years, 30 years ago. They were reasonable.
Oh, we got a lot of staff that are not at the age point where they've been in the ownership market. We have to be even close. Homes off.
They're still paying a mortgage off. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was an idea. I thought I'd throw it out there and see
Well,
if anybody, there was any merit to it or not. There's merit, maybe I can.
I think targeting something at housing problem is a great idea. It's what form do we take that? I worry about just giving people money. Whereas loaning them money, a low interest loan that averages out effective mortgage rate for someone moving in. Because they're high right now, what, 7-8%? Somewhere in that area.
Yeah, it's coming down a little bit, but rapidly.
My first mortgage was 5%, and
The municipality, we have,
years ago.
it's a municipality, public agency, we have the ability to raise funding, raise money, buy loans at a lower rate than private industry. I don't know if that way we could use that to our benefit somehow.
You're talking about selling some bonds and using the bonds for that sort of thing?
When you put it that way, it sounds like a pretty dopey
I
idea.
don't know. I'm not saying anything's a dopey idea. I'm trying to understand the thought process, that's all. You talked about us raising money. How do we raise money? We either
But we
increase
have,
our rates or we sell bonds.
have,
There's some third way
have
to
20,
raise money.
have 20 million in reserves that are sitting in the bank.
We had 8.
I
Yeah,
thought we had 20, about 20.
that
That was a while ago.
pre-TMDL and FEMA
We haven't
disaster.
gotten any FEMA money back yet.
Oh, we have only 8, so that's 8 houses for 22 employees.
As long as we don't have a spill or something where we need money for it, that'd be good. But
That's my concern with
Yeah.
giving a loan out, it locks our money up.
And even if we made a loan, I'd be hard pressed to say only new people can get it, not existing staff.
Yeah, the inequity of it.
If we have staff that's working 2 jobs, and we decide, I don't even know, I mean, what's a down payment on $1 million house these days is 100,000 or 200,000, right?
2 or 300,000.
2 or 3? Yeah. You're not getting a loan without 30% down,
It's 20% minimum, pretty much always.
percent minimum, okay. Now, I don't know how many people we have that are homeowners, but likely if, say it's half the staff, I don't know. But if we're talking about $200,000 low interest or no interest loan, that's $1 million at least. I don't know that we have it right now. I mean, we can drive our reserves to 0, but that's not very, I'm a little uncomfortable with just 8 million in reserves, frankly,
I would agree with you.
because the next spill could take us to 3 million.
Well, yeah, I mean, our normal maintenance projects annually should be somewhere at half that, to be honest with you. So half of what we have, just annually should be about $4 million. So
Oh, I just threw out this idea of a housing allowance just for.
I think you're spot
discussion
on.
purposes.
If we can target finances to the big problem that we have. If in fact, coming in and buying a house here is that biggest problem. Do you get feedback from the people that have said, no, thank you?
I actually have very few applicants that are from out of the area. And that may be because it's just not a feasible thing. That may just be a natural reaction. They just don't.
Just decide not to apply, yeah.
I can't really say for certain that that's the case. I mean, like I said, historically, we would get applicants from other areas willing to relocate. So I can't say that it's because the cost is too high. I think I would be deducing something from just a small number of applicants, and that alone is problematic. I think, I think it's important that I think we look at this as truly a recruitment and retention sort of scenario, because we can focus a lot on recruitment and forget about retention, and then it becomes this sort of circular problem, which we should really try to avoid. I mean, vacancies are vacancies, and they come for a variety of reasons. We've been very lucky to have all of our recruitments come from retirements. It would be a real unfortunate thing to sort of
Say
become
one.
a little bit more normal of an employer who loses people for other factors. We've been
We
super,
only had one leave, not retire.
well, two now, but yes. But it's
Let me
the last 5 years, so.
throw out a number here. Let's say we decided to do a housing allowance and we wanted to make it nominal. And psychologically, you're getting something for a particular purpose that's needed by almost everybody that works here. Let's say we just said our housing allowance was $1,000 a month. That would be $12,000 a year per person, employee. We have 20 employees, that'd be 240,000. So you say and then our salaries are around 3 million. So we're 4 times, we're a couple percent of our. It's a way of
20 times 12,000,
20 by 12,000, 240,000.
240,000,
And our salary, if our
top of the 3 million.
top of the 3 million. So it's a way of getting more money out there that's focused on a particular issue. Whether we can do that or not, I don't know. It's just a number totally out of the air. So why don't we table this one for now and then just cogitate on it and see, is it worth asking staff to do a little bit of research on, seeing what they can find out. We have this firm that we hired to do the study. Are they available to do?
I don't think that they generally do total comp. So this isn't in the total comp range. If this was something that was offered by another agency as a total comp item, it would have been on here, and none of the agencies we compared offered anything like this. So I would say that this is probably a newer thing. It might be something that's a little bit more specific to, like, a lot of school districts are doing some things like this, to try to get teachers to move into the area. I'm not an expert on this. Like I said, I've never worked for an agency that has offered housing allowances of any sort that isn't negotiated specific to a very, particular position via an employment contract. But universally, I would have to research to see sort of even the best place to start, because you definitely would want to get data from sources in which this is common practice for them. I just don't know who does it as common practice.
Well, let's leave it here. Why don't we ask staff to make a recommendation at the next personnel committee meeting, whether they think this is worth a little bit of studying. They cogitate, I ask you to think about it.
Oh, sure.
And if you think it's worth.
One of the alternatives that maybe doesn't accomplish as much, I don't know, is again, moving the whole salary schedule.
That may be more appropriate.
Yeah, I think I would be more in favor of seeing that happen rather than.
That is staff's recommendation, as a response that seems to be like for like to what we're seeing other competing agencies do.
In our current day-to-day, well, I shouldn't say day-to-day, year-to-year operation, how are we doing with putting money back into the reserve fund? Is there Is there in fact money going back to the reserve funds every month?
No, so the reserve contributions are actually a budgeted line item.
Well,
And so those are done at the time in which we budget. And then we do those.
to actually execute.
Correct. When we implement the budget, it's actually twice a year because we correspond them with when we get our tax disbursements so that we have the available cash to make the transfer. But however we do it on paper is when it's plausible to do so, and that just happens to be when we know for a fact it's plausible. But yes, the reserve contributions, we already know what they are when we pass the budget, and anything
I
that
don't
would be.
remember what this year's
Right,
number is.
generally, it is about 1.2 to the treatment plant and about half that to the collection system,
1.2
million.
million.
And we've split flopped them in certain years based on project priority. Like, for example, we were amply funded for TMDL and we had been sort of taking from the collection system in order to meet that objective, and we flip flopped them the following year. It's not, the collection system is not being amply funded. So there, I think in next budget, that will be a conversation to have. We also try to sort of curb what we may shortchange to stabilize rates. When we do our budget reconciliation, we have excess. We tend to sort of supplement there where we know we should have contributed as part of the budget. I don't anticipate near the overage that we've previously had solely because of the penalty from Pepsi. I think we're going to be more in our normal range that we were used to. I'm throwing out a ballpark. I haven't even started reconciliation just because there's adjustments still to be made when we work with our auditor, but I'm going to say a couple $100,000, a few $100,000, nowhere near the 700 that we've had the last couple of years because of those unaccounted for penalties. So in comparison to previous years, that is a very small amount of
Penalties
because
with regard to the two spills?
no, Pepsi, whenever they exceeded their allocations, the cost for that amount
Okay, yes, right.
twice what the
Okay.
normal rate was, and they
Yes,
constantly had overages of exponential amounts. So their average penalty was somewhere in the amount of $30,000 a month, or more. And so you can just wipe that off times 12 as anything that would be, supplementing anything.
right.
So
But this year's budget, and I apologize for not remembering the numbers, but this year's budget included about 1.8 million going back into reserve funds.
I think this particular year's budget is significantly less than that. I think it's approximately, we would have to look, I think it might be 6 and 6 somewhere around, I think it's like somewhere around 650 and 650. It's significantly less.
Okay. 1,000,003.
Yeah, it's somewhere like that. It would be on the left. Here. So collection system replacement reserve is 774.5. And the treatment plant, I think it might be identical. Yes, they're identical. Yes, they're identical. So they're equally funded this year of 774.5 each. So it's about half what we would normally contribute to the treatment plant.
So about 1.5 million to 1.6 million. And what we're putting back into reserve this year.
Correct. Historically, we also used to have somewhere in the excess of 1.5 million. We have not for the last 3 years. For the first 2 years that I was here, we had in excess of 1.5 million from our county fund because we did not need all of that for cash flow. And so we were able to reinvest that also, which we have not done for several years because we need all of our county funds to fund operational plus $3 million from our investment fund.
Let's table the idea of housing allowance. I just want to talk about it.
It's one It's one thing that could be targeted to help people with housing. There, and I think if we help anybody, we have to help everybody.
Well, let's kind of table that and maybe come back to it in the future if it ever is its head as a possibility. Second idea I had, I wanted to just throw out with you guys, is that you can either go around poaching other people, or you can increase the size of the pool, your employment pool. And I don't know if you guys have ever had any luck.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you guys have ever had any luck hiring summer interns, but in the past, I've hired interns with quite a variable range of success, non-success. But a lot of young people don't know about what it's like to work in a water system or a wastewater system. And if we were to, I don't know if there are jobs that you guys would have, you know, we need to focus on the operator type people. Finding a young person who knows how to work with his hands is hard to do these days. And I don't know if you guys have out in the field have low-level jobs like changing oil and sweeping the floors and scrubbing them or putting oil to the pumps or whatever. You guys have a series of relatively easy
Yeah, there's always a list of stuff like that to do.
Is that educational for someone?
Well, that's one of my points is I don't know how much value that would have to kind of introducing them to the actual facets of wastewater treatment. Ventura plant, they've for many years have had an internship program. And they bring interns in, they don't pay them.
Is the city plant?
For quite some time. They get them an operator in training certificate so they can actually work under direct supervision in the plant. And it works out really good for them because then when they go to hire somebody, a position comes available, they know who they're getting. And that seems to work out really well for them. Now they have a lot more staff than we do. So one of the big things that always concerned me with something like that, and I didn't feel like would be a good candidate for that type of program, even though I love the concept, is that we don't really have, we're small staff. So we don't have the people to bring these people up, to spend the time with these people.
Yeah, your existing staff loses
Yeah,
efficiency,
yeah,
training.
not big enough to absorb that. So that's one of my concerns, but I love the concept of an internship program. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that in our situation, you might get an intern in there and after 10 years, he's going to start trying to pay somebody off to retire because 10 years is a long time. There's basically really nobody that leaves. So you'd be an intern for.
There's been periods where we've had people, a lot of people there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Bradshaw. It is an incredible program for the places that have it, but they have a lot of staff and they have a whole sector that is dedicated to that, like people who are, trainers, that's what they do. I mean, and we've gotten people who have gone through those programs before and they do produce really great people. I don't know what their statistic is as far as like how many people they lose. There is a great expense to turnover. And so that is its own sort of ball of wax, if you will, those programs. For us, it's a lot of investment in time and staff time to potentially not end up with what you need at a great monetary expense. And so, like Bradshaw said, it doesn't work for us in our current configuration, and it's definitely not something that we would be opposed to. I just think the expense would be greater than the reward for us because we're looking for one person and we'd have to implement a whole training program to get one person.
Yeah, I'd be more interested in getting a list of the intern people and poaching one of them.
Well,
Let somebody else train them.
surprisingly, they're having challenges getting interns right now. I mean, it's like they have 8 vacancies for operator in training, and you're like, whoa, that used to be the most popular thing. I mean, people were always calling like
An easy way in, yeah.
People that have done internship, they've been through it. They know what the expectations are, and they've actually figured out that's something they want to do. It coming in fresh.
And I don't think this finding quality people is just unique, because I know a little over a year ago when I was still in the public sector, you have trouble getting entry level people.
Sure.
What you find really don't want what you offer, they want the money, but just, I think it's tough all over right now. And I think we'll just have to think of some unique ways to.
Seems to be a common trend, private and public. I think that the market is going to come up if we continue to have these recruitment challenges. To me, but do we want
Natural
to
demand.
stay ahead of it? Or do we want to wait for it to come up and then jump on board, to get qualified people and to compensate them enough to where they're willing to come work for us?
I think one of the worries that Bradshaw and I have talked about is that when you have employers that are responding, because they're in a state where it's really operationally impacting them and they're responding very heavily monetarily, it starts to affect our retention. And then that becomes a compounding problem for us. And I think that's what we're worried about is that essentially is you have people very, very aggressive in the market. And so, it's enticing to people. It's the same reason at one point in time we were able to get those people because we were positioned so well in the market. And so, I think we've been there to know why people come. Not only is it a great place to work, but, like I said, we've been on the receiving end of that, being positioned really well. And so I think we have to be mindful of the fact that, it's worked for us and it could just.
Advantage is gone.
Big time, yeah.
Right. Yeah. We don't want to get to the point where we kind of tip that scale, because losing 1 to 3 key people at this particular point in time with our recruitment and our current staffing could really have an impact.
And for some of these positions, it becomes a safety issue because you're trying to do the same work with less people, and we're strategically already staffed quite slim to where, it could be a safety issue. We have people working in very distinct teams and numbers for safety reasons.
If we had these 4 blue boxes filled, everybody here be happy? Or is there more that we need?
No, I think that's what we need now. I think we have some succession planning to talk about that will ultimately help some of this as well, which is also on our agenda to talk about when the time comes, that will paint maybe a bigger picture of what it's going to look like long term. I think administratively, from my perspective, it's to be determined. So we moved one of the administrative allocations to a field position while we go through some of this restructuring and succession planning. And I predict that there will be some administrative gap that we'll be addressing one time, but the org chart actually addresses that in anticipation of it. So we can talk about that at whatever point in time that eventually comes up. It's not an issue now.
I think addressing the housing issue is a good thing. I think in the meantime, we have to do something, overcome our market weakness. And I would, recognizing we're talking $300,000+ for every 10%, we move the salary scale. I'd like to see us move that scale 15 or 20% and hold it as a policy that we used to have to pay above market. Then we're talking $450,000 to $600,000, which is a good chunk of what we're currently planning to put into reserves. Agree. I think we're reaching a crisis point with our existing staff. Not that they're going to leave because somebody else is offering that much, but because our current staff needs more bodies on the ground.
Yeah,
And I'm not sure there's any other way to do it quickly.
I really think if we could get all the spots full, it'd be nice, but if we could get the environmental compliance inspector rather quickly, that would take a little bit of pressure off.
So they're all actually have equal sort of priority for various reasons, which I can share. The senior treatment plan operator 4 is a necessity for CPO duties. Like I said, this would not be a recommended. I mean, we've gone a long time like this, but should something happen to Bradshaw, we would absolutely have nobody that could be legally designated. We would have to actually borrow somebody from somewhere else or go through like one of those sort of industrial temp agencies to try to get a CPO just to put into place while we sort of organize that, which would be like crisis mode.
Okay.
And so that one has been a huge priority for us. Collection system, huge priority. I mean, they really struggle to, do their SSMP, be in compliance with that. The regulations on that are continuously sort of becoming pinching points. I mean, it's a necessity. The environmental compliance inspector, that is once again regulatory, something that we have to report on, that we've done X, Y, and Z in a specified period of time. We do our best to do that and stay in compliance, but you have the same people from the same teams working against 2 compliance deadlines, and trying to prioritize those. So that's tough. The administrative technician is critical. That is the person who does a lot of the project support from an administrative standpoint, also provides the technical assistance for the environmental compliance inspector. We're currently
Back up to
quite
Liz.
behind on reviewing certified payroll for our projects, entering as built into our computer system, all of those things. This particular person, there's just a couple of examples that are not being done at all. And so just because there absolutely is not enough time in the day for those. So they all have their own level of priority and their own sort of ramifications for the work not being done. It's, it is what it is. I mean, it's a fairly diverse set of vacancies. So the impact sort of spans quite wide through the organization.
Another thing, PR mode, if you will, appeals to me is just given a little bit of COLA to the staff and fair chunk the board of directors. It might look a little better if we gave a bigger chunk to the staff. Changing the salary grid, do that immediately. It might make it easier to start recruiting again immediately.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, it costs a lot of money. Worry about that because I don't want us having to front another $5 million environmental crisis with a broken main somewhere.
What do we have coming back from FEMA?
We spent 5 million. I can't say for certain how much we're going to get back. It's still to be determined. They're still dicing through what percentage falls into what category based on project structure and eligible expenses. 3/4 of that probably.
OES might kick in some.
That was sort of my estimate altogether, was about 3/4 of that. Depending.
About 3/4. Okay.
It could be more. That's a concern.
I recall your previous report. We really don't know when that's going to come through.
No
No,
clue.
we don't.
Mm-mm.
No clue. Because we could make it, if we had that money in hand.
Oh, that would make it easy. We're not here for easy, sadly. I think, Bill. How do we, let's just say, jumpstart our recruitment effort?
Yeah, we just
To give our staff some,
need to make our carrots more appealing for sure.
yeah.
I think now is probably a good time to look at pushing our scale out and increasing it.
Does a number suggest itself to you? You said we're at or below market right now?
Our scale is representative of market as of June of 2023. So you're already a year behind just in CPI.
4 or 5% down.
Mhm. And then you have market demand that you're considering, so.
I think we should look at the numbers and just push it out 20%.
Do you want me to bring the
That was the number
board
I liked.
an estimate of like 15% and 20%?
Let's do,
It's gonna be 450 to 600,000,
Is there any way we could,
thereabouts.
any way we could dig up that old 20% policy that you?
I can look and see where it came from.
I remember
Because
that.
if that already exists, it kind of takes the pressure off of us. We just say, hey, we found this old dusty policy we forgot about.
I can definitely look
We're
for
all
it.
getting a raise.
So was it a policy or was it a general consensus of
I
how
don't,
we
I
wanted to do
don't, I
business? You
don't
know?
remember, Bradshaw. It seems like I remember something like that.
Me too, and I can't find it. I mean,
But I can't.
It must have been implemented though, in a bump to the salary scale.
Yeah, I mean, it may not have been, it may have been an adopted policy specific to a point in time, but not necessarily an ongoing policy. I think, like I said, we would be looking to create an ongoing policy that somewhat guides these conversations.
I would favor more just not, we could get that for just an idea of history maybe, but I would be more in favor of putting something in place. It's there.
We can do something concrete now, whatever the policy turns out to be in the future.
Right.
Yeah, it's,
That, like I said, that policy is fairly comprehensive. It addresses all sorts of pay-related scale things that would be standard sort of decisions at specific points in time. So, but yeah.
We have 3 weeks till the next regular board meeting. And you need a week to agendize things for the next board meeting.
Correct.
And you, to give yourself a week of buffer, would you come back in a week and talk to us hard numbers about what 15 or 20% on the salary
Oh,
scale?
yeah, that's easy because I know what our salaries are budgeted to be. And so I would use our budget numbers because those would dictate what we would need to pay.
So if the budget doesn't include these 4 blue boxes.
Yes, it does.
yeah, they do.
Oh, it does.
So
Okay,
budget includes all staff. So we are talking fairly accurate numbers. Like I could get a more
good.
accurate number as far as if there was anything necessary for this year, starting at this point in time, which I would not probably recommend doing any adjustment until we get to like mid-year or greater and see where we land, because depending on how long these vacancies are, there would be ample money, to cover any deficit for this
Would
decision.
not recommend.
Doing a budget adjustment for this fiscal year because we have so many vacancies that have
Oh.
sort of hedged against what was budgeted,
Okay.
that we may end up just
So
fine.
that eats into.
For this year.
Right, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
It would just be almost more acknowledging the ongoing costs when you adopt this is the numbers that we'd be talking about.
So you're not arguing against not doing something right now.
I actually think there should be ample funding to do this year without any budgetary impact because of the vacancy savings we've had. But I will evaluate that more closely.
Well, suppose we ask staff to come back as quickly as possible to the committee with 2 things. The legality and potential cost of housing assistance, either as cash, which I'm not in favor of, or as a loan, which still seems kind of problematic, because some people would get it and some people wouldn't. And also, as a second point, back, but that's on housing. Is it legal? What are the ramifications of doing it? To the individuals, to the district? And then a second point of what would 15 or 20% on the salary grid actually amount to? So that we can make an informed judgment on what to do about that. To recommend to the full board.
Use 15%.
I like 20. He likes 20.
I like 20. I mean, three of us are like 20.
Well, let's not bother with 15 then.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you would like this to come back to a committee with a draft staff report. So we would not be able to do that next week because I'm on vacation. But I could draft it probably by the end of this week, but I wouldn't be able to meet until,
Till the week before the board meeting.
so the week of the 16th, which would be totally fine because I can draft it and get, and the agenda can post and everything. So it'll be fine by the end of this week because it's quite an easy staff report. I don't know that I'll be able to get to the housing portion, but I will try to get some data. Where I start with that, I'm not really sure yet. I'll have to sort of reach out. So I could schedule the week of the 16th, and as long as we make a recommendation, because my staff report will be very, very similar to what would be presented to the board. We could still make the
We would
September.
have time to agenda.
Yes, because I generally post my packet on the 19th. So if we met like on September 16th or 17th, that's a Monday or Tuesday.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone, actually. Be good for the 16th or the 17th. I'll be out of town on the 19th,
Okay.
20th, 23rd, so I won't be at the 23rd board meeting. I won't be back in town till the 24th.
Okay, so how does,
Okay.
September, but you do remember, will you be able to remotely attend? Because remember, we made that slight exception in the new policy that says you can't be a voting member, you can still listen and you still get paid. if you
Well, the
want.
Brown Act says you can be a regular voting discussing member.
Oh, yeah, if you post where you're
If
gonna
you
be.
post the venue,
Mhm.
if you know where you're gonna be the evening of the 23rd, and that's on the agenda. I've done that twice with the City Planning Commission.
Yeah, I'll try to get into your house over the weekend.
It's gonna be a good guess, because I'll be on the I-5 somewhere.
Okay, perfect. Fair
Okay.
enough. So September
I just don't know
16th,
For sure.
September 16th, the Monday, is everybody available at 4 PM?
I'm available.
Yeah, I can be.
We're only gonna bring something to the board at this point for information discussion, right? We're not gonna approve anything. I think this is a pretty
We
big step.
don't make the decision, we make a
That's why I
recommendation.
got
Let's be a recommendation.
Can we have a discussion with the board before we bring it to them, the recommendation?
I think that can fall in with the recommendation, probably.
Yeah, so generally they always have the opportunity to have a discussion.
Jim, you're not available the 16th?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you weren't.
oh, no, I'm available, sorry.
But they are looking for a recommendation. That's why we're reconvening here. So if you could make some sort of recommendation and then further discussion on something else, something for them to consider.
It just seems so sudden to me, coming up with a 20% increase in everybody's salary. It seems like this is something we at least have a committee meeting.
I think it's,
Lowell's gonna need a little time.
it's a little sudden, but not really, because we've been kind of looking at this problem for a bit of time, trying to
We've
figure it out.
known we have a recruiting crisis
And I
for
think
a long time now.
we all thought we would kind of, or we all talked, or I talked about putting it off until after the elections to see if maybe the financial stuff kind of turned around a little bit. But it appears to me now we need to do this sooner than later,
The
so.
composition of the board isn't going to change that much between now and December.
So I think that it's probably
Uh,
prudent that we.
I would suggest we present it to the board in such a way that if the board may have questions, what if this, what if that, what would 15% look like? Lowell's gonna give us a good grilling.
Sure.
And so maybe we can bring it to the board as our recommendation. If they decide they want, let it be clear to them, the rest of the board, if they have serious questions or they want more information, they can put it together and we can bring that back the following month.
Yeah, they always,
That-
they
that's always
always
the
have the ability
case,
to do
yeah.
that, to direct staff.
I just don't want them to think we're trying to ram something down and down. It's a huge step.
It is a huge step, in my opinion, in response to a huge problem.
That it is.
And that is 20% vacancy in our staff that has persisted for a long time now. And it's not just that we asked some people to take on extra duties and gave them a 10% bump while they're doing their job plus half of somebody else's. I think we're gonna wear out our staff.
I agree with you. I think it's the right thing to do. It just may just take a little more time to let it soak in.
That's why we do preliminary committee meetings like this. But yes, I agree. It could be a long session. The full board talk about this kind of a step.
That's all I was saying. So I don't object to it otherwise.
I think we need to recommend it. And I think by and large, the board will see the wisdom of it. Because all of us are aware of the problem. The solution is, this is one potential solution. So shall we get together on the 16th? 16th at 4.
What a deal.
Well, I think even if, you know, we bring it to the board this month and it gets pushed out until the next board meeting in October, that's still sooner than what it would be if we waited, so.
It would help me a lot psychologically if you could find any justification for that prior 20%.
Oh, sure, I'll look.
You can't find it, don't knock yourself out.
Yeah, I'd like to cut that off by 6 if we could. I have a 7 o'clock meeting. That day.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Chairman, so you can cut it off in time.
You got the gavel.
That's third Monday, yeah.
Do we want to finish the rest of item 5?
Yes.
Yes, what,
So as part of our compensation study, CPS HR Consulting, they always report on total compensation. So there are certain items that we addressed as part of total compensation. There are certain items that we did not discuss. We do not have to discuss them. But I think it's important that we sort of reviewing the study, and these are the sort of benefits / total comp items that have not been discussed. One of them being retirement contribution and formulas. They just essentially review all of the PERS agencies, what their retirement formula is. I need
more words.
but I'm going to give you more words in a second. So for example, our retirement formula is 2% at 55 and 2% at 62. The final average is the highest 3 years. There are other agencies that use the highest 1 year. That makes a difference for some people.
Sure.
It's just something to consider. It's on our comparisons. I was going to look
2% at 55.
55 and 2% at 62.
What is that? 2% of what?
40%, for the 55s is 40% with 20 years of service. So it's 2% a year for the years of service if you're aged 55.
Okay, and at 62, it's
That's
the
because of
highest
the pepper.
25.
No, it's because of pepper, the CalPERS changed the laws. And so, they are,
At 62, it's 2% a year. No matter how long you were here.
no, it's still the same 2%, but it becomes, 40% at 62, basically.
That's actually not the significant factor in this conversation, actually. That's pretty standard. The highest one is 2.7 at 55. And that's only, I think, two of the total comps, or three of the 8 comps had 2.7 at 55 and 62. So that's not an enormous difference. I would say that
Military does 2.5.
for the most part, most people have the same formula as us. It's more the retirement formula based on years, which is, like I said, ours is the highest 3 years, whereas almost all of them do the highest 1 year. And so I'm not sure how we ended up with 3 years. There are some conversation of the fact that maybe at one time that wasn't what we had, and we assumed the Oakview Sanitary District PERS contract, which had some other more favorable terms that were no longer available. And so we sort of swapped out certain things for certain things at one time. Hence why we don't contribute to Social Security, et cetera. That was in their contract and apparently not in OHI's. And so we swapped out, and they allowed us to essentially be grandfathered into their PERS contract. And so we assumed these things. There is some interest in looking into it being the highest 1 year. I don't know that actually.
The military does. They do
Pays us
2.5% a year.
Mhm.
Between, you have to be in at least 20 to get anything. And most have to retire at 30. General officers don't have to. But it's that percentage of your final salary. So it's the 1 year.
So I'm throwing it out there. I was going to look into what it looks like to potentially change ours to that more favorable term. I don't know that it has an enormous financial impact. I can't imagine that it does. Or if it's even possible based on sort of how we ended up with our PERS contract.
It depends, if somebody were to retire this year or next year, last 3 years of inflation would make a big difference between 1 year and 2 years.
Yes, I don't, like I said.
But that's not norm.
Right, and I don't know, like I said, with our small structure and our small employee pool, I just don't know that the number, you can play the numbers that much to make an enormous difference. It's not like you have people moving laterally and upwards a lot to where it makes an enormous difference. My preliminary at least thoughts say that. So that's one thing.
Just for the record, on my point of view, I'm a PERS retiree. I got the greatest one last year, highest. But I think 3 years is more representative because it doesn't, it kind of prevents any spiking. You know, people get that big promotion for
There's
their.
been a lot of that in the news.
So I would prefer to stick with the 3 years. It's just my opinion. I could be persuaded otherwise.
3 years, 3 years is mandatory for PEPRA. For Classic, we're the only one with 3 years for Classic members that adopt 3 years across the board for both membership types.
For all of the comp agencies you've been looking at. Those are all 1 year.
They're all 1 year for Classic, and 3 years is must be mandatory for PEPRA because they're all 3 years. Most of our employees here, well, used to be Classic. Our retirees have left, but we have some PEPRA employees, but those are non-negotiable. CalPERS has set those by law now, so
PEPRA is 3 years by law,
I think it's by law.
by regulation.
Anybody after 2013 has different standards that are non-negotiable.
Pension spiking is also gone, you know.
Well, pension spiking has less of an effect than it used to.
So anyway, so that's one of the things, and I can look into that and bring it back to the committee as something to think about if you want. I'm not hugely familiar with changing any sort of PERS contracts. This would be new to me, so but I can definitely reach out and see sort of how we landed there and why. And so that was that one. Second one is defined contribution plan. So ours is 457. It would be like into a 401k, and the matching that goes with that. So we do not match any of our employee contributions. And 50% of our comps, more than 50% of our comps match in some form. That is something that is sort of popular amongst staff as far as conversationally. If there was a increase in benefits, 457 matching would be one that would be popular for them.
More words about what you said just before that, though.
Remember, I think there was on the employee satisfaction survey, I think there was a section about benefits and what benefits were important. Those came directly from a list that was compiled by like an internal employee survey. 457 matching is high on their list of things they'd like to see the board or the committee discuss as a possibility. For anybody that comes from private industry, they always match.
Yes.
And so it's sort of like a jolting thing if you come from somewhere private to come to somewhere that doesn't match at all. So.
The comp agencies, how much do they match?
Anywhere from 2 to 6% or a flat monthly amount, flat per pay period amount of like 150. So it's across the board. It's a whole bunch of different things. So some of them, the majority of them match based on a percentage of your employee contributions, and encourages your employees to contribute. The more they contribute, the more they get from you. I think that would be very beneficial here. We don't have a high contributing employee base, which is, I think, anything that we can encourage our employees to plan for their retirement would be a good thing. So that's one of them that's on the total comp list. And long-term, short-term disability insurance and life insurance. I did get a quote because you asked me to get one. And so to reevaluate, long-term, short-term disability insurance does not seem to be a hugely negotiable thing. It's kind of a set amount of X percentage under these particular terms. There was no increase in those particular benefits offered from any of the carriers in the pool that she went out to quote from. So our existing one seems to be fairly standard for a non-Social Security EDD type short-term, long-term disability structure. Life insurance, we can definitely change our life insurance structure. We can offer, we discussed offering the flat amount, the same thing to all employees. We talked about potentially finding a carrier that would allow our employees to also contribute directly for increased coverage. That is a possibility. And so
that's a private industry kind of standard.
yes, I mean, life insurance in general, it can be very inexpensive to go out on your own and get. So I'm not sure that an employer supporting that is necessarily going to cost them any less. To go get, to supplement what we already offer, but it's a possibility if by sheer convenience, that's something that they'd want to do. It does appear that some carriers in the pool are willing to have some sort of employee paid supplemental something. I'm sure we would have to administer that via payroll deductions and then direct payments. So we'd have to facilitate that through our payroll
Right
department.
now, it's a year's salary or something like that.
It's 45,000 for most of the employees, and then management level is 85,000.
So it's not tied to salary. Tied to salary is a private industry kind of.
Tying to salary is very difficult. It's hard to track, and then some carriers have a maximum. And so it's not something that you can always honor as years go on, because you get to a ceiling, and then to honor what you've agreed to do, you have to change carriers and go back to underwriting. And that's happened before with our general manager exceeded what our carrier would. And so essentially what was allocated was not possible. So that's what it was, unfortunately. So that's that one. And then some employers do offer longevity incentives based on years of service. So essentially, an incentive for those folks that have hit their ceiling and, you know, are willing to stay for a long period of time. It's about 50-50 from our comparable agencies that do and don't. It's like some years are up 10 years, $500, 15 years, $750, 20 years, $1,000. So it's some payments, some of them go as high as $2,500 for 20 years. Some of them do it, you know, it's a monthly amount. It's something to consider. Mathematically, it's a fairly large expense for the district, just to throw that out there.
The longevity pay. The military does that. And it creates a fair number of people, in my experience, that are what we call road, hired on active duty. They're happy to just get the bump every year without having the job change or anything. And that's what a COLA is already.
I mean, I tend to agree that, I mean, I think there's other ways that you can incentivize without it being based on solely on years of service. I think we have a really good organizational structure here that offers a lot of opportunity, you know, that has mutual benefit. But I'm throwing that out there because that is something that was evaluated as total
I
comp.
notice even if we hire a TPO4, there's a TPO5 slot. in the
There-
Salary grid.
There is, I mean, it's a necessity based thing. I mean,
Is that an extra certification or something to be a 5?
Mhm. Yeah. And so we've told all of our employees that we do not hold only a certain amount of spots for a certain amount of certification, that essentially, obviously the leads and the seniors are based on necessity. And I mean, we're very small, so not everybody can be a lead because then you're a lead of just yourself. Organizationally, that doesn't work out. But if everybody wanted to be a 5, we would absolutely, it would be a treatment plan operator 5 on our scale. I mean, we strongly encourage, unlike other agencies, they'll have 5s that are still in a 3-level slot because there's no 5 slot available for them. We're not like that. So there is always an incentive to gain certification here, and there's always a slot available for you to be monetarily compensated for that extra effort. So
Actually, at the
yeah,
collection.
and for collections and treatment plan.
That's a good thing.
I've got salary scale, housing allowance, 457 match, and longevity pay. Is there
And-
another issue you,
Defined contribution of 457 matching,
yeah?
retirement
Oh,
contribution and formula, long-term, short-term disability, life insurance, and longevity. Yes, so it's,
I think it's the first one you don't know.
yeah, it's 5 things.
The 36 of the 12 months.
36.
The retirement formula of being 3 years or their highest.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are those. If the committee wants to give direction, I can bring any of these back with more information. We can talk about them at a later personnel committee meeting if we want to do these one thing at a time. Entirely up to you. Perhaps these end up contingent on what you do on the other side. They all have a monetary factor, obviously, so it's entirely up to you.
How many of them, I think the salary scale and maybe the 457 match things, and maybe the 3 years versus 1 year, are all pretty immediate. Well, 3 year versus 1 year. Nobody's retiring this month, so
No,
not a big
somebody
impact.
coming in,
The other, but
Yeah.
okay,
it would make a difference.
can you do those 3 in the next 2 weeks?
Yes,
And then the other 3 we can
yes.
look at for another time? Sound reasonable?
Works for me.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
The red side would like to talk about the life insurance, but we're not going to talk about that today.
Long-term, short-term care, longevity pay, and housing allowance be the ones that we pick up next.
Yes,
That sounds good.
yes. That's what I heard.
Okay. Here's our request.
Got it.
Number 6, succession planning.
I actually have one more thing for this particular item that's not on here. And that was my bad, is, alternate work schedules. This has come up, as a recruitment thing. We have folks who come from other agencies that have 980s or 410s. And they don't apply because we do not have alternate work schedules. Same with administrative staff who have, remote work days. And, days where they're required to report in the office and remote work, and then, or have alternate work schedules. Throwing it out there as something that is become absolutely post-COVID. If it wasn't standard before, it's standard post-COVID. And it plays a huge factor for people, especially if you have kiddos. And so,
Yeah, getting every Friday or every other Friday off
Yeah. so,
was a big deal.
Yeah.
10 years ago.
So I'm throwing that out there as a future conversation for the personnel committee. And we can talk about sort of what the logistics of that looks like. But more and more, agencies are passing policies, that allow for a lot of flexibility in work schedules. The city of Ojai just did one for all of their office staff.
Went to 410s.
410s, and they're allowed, I think, 2 remote work days a week. Yeah, I mean,
20 on, 20 off every week.
I think it's something like that. And then I think the county just passed remote work schedule for several of their departments that I think the 980ers get up to 3 remote work days on their 980 on their full week, and then 2 remote work days on their short week. And they have the option of, and they went to 980s for the whole department. So there's all sorts, and this was very recent. So there's a lot of alternate work schedules. And so it's something to consider.
Listen,
Yes.
when I was at United, we had a flexible work day. We had hours, you had to be there from, I forget, 8:30 to 3 or something like that. But the other hours, you could either add your extra hours, beginning or the end. You had flexibility in when you took those. So in general, I support flexible work.
Yeah. There's all different ways you can do it. There are some legal requirements as far as how many hours someone has, can work, and has to have a lunch. And if they work over X amount of hours, they get a dinner break, and those sorts of things we want to avoid. You know that. You want to avoid those sorts of things. We also have DOT drivers. And so we'd want to set up their schedules to where we were aware of how many hours consecutively they were working, so that we didn't run into any required rest periods for our DOT workers. But
That's the drivers.
correct. Just in case they had to respond to an emergency directly after ending like a 10-hour day. Very rarely happens. So I don't see that as a huge issue. And generally there are emergency exceptions to that anyway. But those are definitely considerations as we talk about logistics and sort of, like Bradshaw would be more familiar with some of the logistical challenges, and how we'd navigate those with some of the field crews, and what that would look like. So obviously a lot easier for administrative staff than it is.
Yeah, I think it would be easier for collection system, the plant. There might be some more ramifications that.
And some of the plant people are very used to their schedule, and so could take it or leave it. And I think there are people in general, like some people it's very doable. Other people, they've got it down to a science with their family dynamics. And so
Because it could equal some more standby time and some more overtime for the plant people.
Which is a 410 or a 980 easier for you to manage?
Well, I'd have to,
People.
yeah, to be honest with you, I would have to sit down and first get the consensus from the plant folks. And then sit down and start figuring out, okay, well, how could we make that work, So I don't really have a direct answer for that, but that would be my first step.
Election is all in on the 410.
yeah, I think having managed department with alternate work schedules of both kinds, I think a 980 is very challenging to navigate, from logistical standpoints. 410s are a lot easier to navigate with vacation requests and coverage and stuff because it's a much more literal schedule versus who has that Friday, who has that, you know, I mean.
That's gotta be my initial thought as well.
The way we did 980s at Harris was you split the week at noon on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everybody knew that the second Friday was off.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why that would be harder to manage than 410s.
Well, yes, the vacation.
Besides which, if everybody's working 410s, then Fridays are just like weekends and holidays. You wind up having to assign people additional hours. I found that I could handle, I mean, I worked 10 hours a day anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's management. With the hourly people, there seemed to be a big drop off after 9 hours a day. Well, there was some drop off after 8, but
Yeah, I have
Bigger
my
drop
thoughts
off
about,
after nine.
times of productivity and things.
I mean, I think that's statistically accurate
yeah.
for the most part. And I think I mean, it really becomes like you sort of take the good with the bad, if you will. I mean, if that makes sense. And it just, but yes, statistically, that is accurate.
Well, all I was asking was, if you had to manage every Friday is a fill-in of some sort versus every second Friday, is that a big difference to you?
I think it's all doable. I think both scenarios are definitely
We
manageable.
would have just had a 4-day weekend. So what, everybody gets what, time and a half for the missing Friday?
Yeah, whoever's manning the plant for those,
Yeah.
few hours in the morning, hours-ish.
I don't know if that's too much to add to your plate for 2 weeks from now.
I can't do that. No.
I'm sorry, you
Let's
can't.
break that
do
one.
No,
It's reached our max.
no, only because I'm off that week. I have a week less that I'm getting rid, so I probably cannot do that one. But I can add that to the part 2 list.
So priority 1 is gonna be salary scale, 4-5-7 match. And 3 years versus 1 year for retirement.
Correct, that's what I have.
And then housing allowance, longevity pay, long-term, short-term care, and alternate work schedules is priority 2, maybe the October meeting.
Yep, got it.
And I have managed the 980s and 410s, and I'm happy to go over that, share what I've found over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. We discussed poaching earlier. I wasn't suggesting that we go target individuals. But if we make them enticing enough.
Yeah.
They will self-select.
Correct. Word of mouth travels fast anyway.
Okay. We haven't covered really succession planning.
No. So succession planning, I distributed our current org chart. So this is the org chart that was in the budget with the exception of the environmental compliance inspector. It's in the exact same location on this. It just was previously titled senior construction inspector. But everything else is the same as was on the budget and was approved as at the conclusion of the class and comp study. So this is our current org chart. As we look towards succession planning, this was created as we've had conversations with succession planning in mind. We have a couple of positions that we definitely need to start talking about succession planning for. We know we have 2 retirements that are on the horizon in the fairly near future. One of them being our IT manager, Yan. The second one would be our CIP project administrator, which is Rick. Very possibly sometime in the next less than 12 months. I don't know exactly, but
Then you
I
gotta
I
exchange
have a good
that.
idea of
Exactly.
what's gonna happen. Both very critical positions. We'll talk about Jan specifically, and he was definitely part of the conversation of what this organization chart looks like. Post him, as his position is super unique to the district. And so will be eliminated and reclassified to one of the ones that is on here. The ideal succession planning for him would be to immediately start considering recruiting for an IT tech. And this would be someone that could work alongside Ian to learn his day-to-day involvement with our technology and systems.
That person would become the admin tech.
They would know they would be an IT tech, and then Jan's position would be eliminated in our org chart when he retires. So essentially, our IT person would be an IT tech. And we have some consultants that would take over.
See that on the chart.
It's on the far left in white, and the little arm on the left.
Oh, I see, IT tech, okay.
And Ian can talk about what he's already sort of pre-planned some of the outsourcing.
The admin tech then is engineering support as opposed to
Correct.
general IT.
That is correct.
So we're not gonna have an IT manager?
That is not our recommendation, no. We're fairly small, and so I think that there are things that logically can be done by a very savvy IT person from a day-to-day standpoint. Some of our very technical things, we already have incredible consultants that work for us that can take on a larger role. I'll let Jan speak to that specifically in a minute. But we would like to consider getting the board to approve filling an IT tech position so that Jan can essentially train somebody on his way out, as that's such a critical position. It's not like some of our other positions that can remain vacant and somebody else can cover those. His knowledge is very specific to him.
Unless you-
It's not
Microsoft,
our
bunch of
wheelhouse.
Consultants, yeah.
Yeah. And from a security standpoint, it would be really important that we essentially knew what somebody's capabilities were, what they would be doing, and there'd be a very smooth transition over time. And so that's our recommendation as we talk about succession planning for that. I'll let Jan talk a little bit more about sort of what that downgraded position looks and how it would, get supplemented otherwise.
Yeah, so I think the idea is that we get this IT tech in here that's gonna basically run the day-to-day operations. Your computer's not working, some program's not working, your printer's not printing, those kind of issues. And then the back end, be it the network side, be it the firewall side, security side, or SCADA system related, that would all kind of be farmed out. Now, who knows what the future holds as far as.
Who's gonna manage the farmed out part? If you farm something out, someone has to manage their work, or at least coordinate their work.
That would be management. And I would be around to help facilitate where I already work with a few companies that kind of back me up when I go on vacations. In the event that something should go wrong. And so we would probably start leaning more on those specific companies for the role of, replacing servers or making changes to your firewall or incorporating new features, things, that would all be done from an outside source.
And this person that would not be a lost concept to this particular person. I mean, they'd ideally be very tech savvy. It would just be a matter of, and they could seemingly also be a perfectly capable liaison. And that's one of the sort of concurrently sort of, allowing Ian to work his way out and train somebody is he can provide them the correct context to be able to liaison appropriately, as it pertains to exactly
And why?
right. And allow them to the time to understand the why behind the what specific to like our industry and how we operate, which you can only learn over time. So.
Well, let me confess that coming into this meeting today, I had a different idea. I thought was, we're a small organization and we're highly dependent on your expertise. And, we're gonna keep this place running because otherwise there's raw sewage flowing.
Anywhere. I'm still in town.
Well, you're going somewhere in the spring You may be going to-
You may be going somewhere.
You may be going to Denmark, who knows?
We're going to Denmark for sure, yeah.
Okay, but I thought this position was, and I've been listening very closely to the reports over the last 4 years. And you had to come in and solve this problem, you had to come in and solve that problem, and this problem was a Microsoft software update that went bad, or whatever. And it's fairly highly specialized. You need to know where everything is, how it's all hooked up, how it works. So my thinking coming into this meeting today, when I saw the agenda, was let's not wait, let's hire an assistant IT manager right now. And then when you retire, assistant would have 6 months or whatever it is to learn as much as we can. The assistant IT manager would become the IT manager, and that would be understood when we hired this person in the first place. And it seems to me that if we hire an IT manager, we're gonna get or assistant IT manager with the understanding they're gonna become an IT manager. We're gonna get a higher quality person than if we say IT tech, because IT tech could be anything. It could be a guy that make sure we didn't forget to plug the computer in the wall. And
We use some very specialized pieces of software that you're not gonna, the average either IT manager is not gonna have any understanding about it.
he's gonna have to learn that from you over the 6 months that we have together, right?
I think one of the,
So let's hire an assistant IT manager. That's my thinking.
I think one of the challenges is, and these job descriptions are written, and so they are written to require some very specific knowledge.
Presumably, the job descriptions were written focused on Yan, because Yan has that experience.
These were specifically written as part of the succession plan for Yan. I think the unfortunate thing is that because what we do is so specialized, that we can call them an IT manager, but they may not necessarily come in with any more knowledge for us as an operation than a tech would. You may get more technical skills, but you still have to apply them appropriately to the programs we use, to the way that we do business, so you could potentially be hiring a title, but not getting much more for it, because you're not going to get a Yan. We can call them a manager and they're not going to be a Yan.
But a manager position will come with a higher salary, which will allow us to hire a higher quality person equivalent to Yan.
Well, I don't think we'll find that.
Yeah, the problem is that I've been here for so long that I kind of have a finger in everything that we do, anything that have to do with any piece of electronics in anything,
Exactly.
Things that have nothing to do with electronics, because you've been here in other positions, and so.
No, true. No. So
I don't want to, when we're hiring, we write the job description, we write the ad, we put another quarter-page ad in the star, green and yellow. I want to be able to attract the right person, a real top quality, top-notch guy that we didn't know existed. If we write it so that it's a broad, very broadly written, so that it could be just some kid that graduated with a degree in computer science and have the experience. I want to be able to hire the right person, make this job attractive to people because of salary. And he won't be IT manager because he's not managing any people. Maybe that's a reason not to give him the title IT manager, but he's managing a lot of equipment and software. So that's just my view, guys. I should hand it over to you.
No, I agree with you in part. I have been reading all the reports as well. And in the main, I think what happens is that Yan says, I found this problem and I talked to the equipment manufacturer, or I talked to the software source, and we worked out a solution and I've implemented it. But I don't see Yan sitting back there fixing everything by himself. It's a matter of knowing who to call, why, and then working through it with a high level of technical expertise, obviously. But I don't anticipate having a one-off person anywhere that's going to solve all the problems. It's somebody that has to learn from Yan to call why and when. The when being before it gets to be too much of a problem. And then work it out. And I mean, if it's SCADA, that's one supplier. If it's the on-call system, that's a different supplier. All of those things, it's a matter of knowing who to talk to get a problem solved. That takes a high-level person, but it doesn't take somebody who knows how everything works the way Yan does, because nobody's been here for 20 years,
35 years,
35,
32.
whatever.
32 years.
Yeah, and there's even programming because we have a custom application. Our customer service database is a custom application.
Okay,
And so that's developed between me and a programmer that I use. I mean, and so we have that as well.
and the language,
It is C sharp.
C plus,
Yeah.
C plus.
Am I wrong in thinking this position is gonna have to be a problem solver?
Sure.
And I mean, so handling some difficult, highly technical problems that maybe they've never encountered before, because you're always encountering problems that you haven't encountered before.
Hey.
So we need the right,
All this problems.
really sharp guy.
Someone who is a diagnostician, as well as technical sense.
Exactly, yeah. He can't just be good at yapping on the telephone. He's gotta be able to solve problems. I don't know. I want to get the highest quality person we can get. And we can attract them by having a fancy title IT manager and a better salary. Because a tech, when you say tech to me, the tech could be anything. It could be a computer science.
Orders from somebody else.
I think the intention was just a lower level.
Yeah, it's what we called it because that's
I don't want a lower
in the
level.
industry. And the job description is not written to be some generic, person that if like they're a video gaming specialist, that they're going to qualify here. I mean, the positions are not written that way. But I mean, we can definitely, if the committee wants to recommend to the board having a higher level, well, we can have a new classification done. I would have to see, what difference that would make between the two. We can always try, like I said, we can always try to recruit for an IT tech too on the job description. And like I said, you'd be surprised what you might get. Ironically, for our admin tech position, we got so many tech people. So the tech people are out there. We just can't get any of our other roles. So we'll see. But like I said, I think the necessity is really to find somebody that has a really good foundational base of similar knowledge and skills, and then allow them the time to learn the exact specifics of what that looks like.
There really is another box on here that should be colored blue. And that's the Yan follower, if you will.
Well,
That's the.
yes,
Yeah,
well,
right,
just
yeah.
because budgetarily they swap each other out, so they're technically not blue until one is vacant. That's why we're saying that
I see.
we would like to
Okay.
fill them
Yeah.
concurrently, which is not usual, because usually we don't fill two positions at one time. But because we know eventually he's going to retire and there is a definite necessity for this person to learn directly from the subject matter expert themselves, that we'd like to move forward on trying to fill something to backfill him based on our succession plan while he's still here.
Well, Yan, was the IT Tech 2 position have enough substance in it?
I don't know. Do we have a job description for the two?
Yes.
We do? Okay, I'll have to read that again. Yeah. To see what that actually really reads.
I assume you're gonna be instrumental in selecting the person.
Sure.
You know the questions to ask, obviously.
Maybe we could talk about that at the next meeting in 2 weeks.
Sure. And we can, in the meantime, I can review the job description.
Yeah.
Like I said, we can make small modifications to the existing job description, as long as it doesn't sort of span into these ones are a little bit easier because they're not in a series, they're not per se, and they're very specific. So if Ian's like, well, it doesn't say that they need to know this computer program, or I think they should have 5 years of experience instead of 3. Those are easy things to change, and they don't change anything in here. And because we don't have someone currently in them, it's not holding the same person to 2 different standards. So we can definitely make modifications to the one that's existing if it needs to be a little more specific. Yeah, it's easy enough.
Yeah, I just my opinion, I think I would rather see it advertised as an IT Tech 2 or a 1. My brother has been in IT since after high school. When he got in, he's been in for years. He's actually titled an IT manager now, but when his stuff breaks, he's only making the calls to have somebody fix it. He's not actually turning the bolts anymore. He's more responsible for managing the people that turn the bolts. And I don't think that we need somebody here to manage somebody that turns the bolts. I just think we need to have somebody here that can work under the office administration and turn the bolts. So
Yeah,
that's just my thought.
yeah, my son, who is an attorney, took a 6-month not sabbatical, turned out to be a little more than that. But he went to work at Apple as in-house counsel. And the main job of in-house counsel is to manage outside counsel on various cases. And this seems to me like a combination of in-house counsel and diagnostician. And my question then for Yan would be, once you've looked at these job descriptions,
Yeah.
do they seem adequate to you? If not, how do we need to fix them?
Right, yeah, no, we'll look them over again, and if I think that we need some tweaks, we will talk about those tweaks and come back
Yep.
to the committee with that, yeah.
We can make that part of our actual proposal of the drafted, job descriptions have been reviewed. This, we can redline them. We want to make these following modifications to them. As long as they're relatively minor, they shouldn't affect the compensation study at all, because we all know that, what programs and other duties as assigned are completely interchangeable. And so I don't see that as a problem.
OTA is part of every job description.
Yep.
Okay,
And then the second succession planning of discussion is the CIP project administrator. So that's Rick Knack. And so his focus until such time that he is probably likely going to leave, the timing is going to be probably exact, is the completion of the TMDL project. And so that's his sort of sole focus at this current
somewhere between now and next June.
correct. And so that position, he's been here 6 years. And one of his priority focuses was he's been an amazing mentor to Liz and worked on a lot of projects with her from beginning to end, really sort of helping her with what that looks like, but also and in some of the bigger projects that we had in the interim, but mostly the planning and design phase and execution of the TMDL. And so once that's completed, the recommendation is to actually eliminate that position and then backfill it with a project manager 1, someone who can assist Liz in all the things in which Rick was assisting her in, as far as from a mentorship thing. And so that would be bid documents, selecting consultants, project management and inspection, those sorts of things. They would be part of the team with that admin tech position. But we definitely have an ever-growing project management sort of demand and team as we take more stuff in-house. And so it would be best to sort of move that into a little bit more of the day-to-day ground level project management and project implementation as part of our sort of CIP team and managing that. And so that would be the recommendation for that one. I don't know that we necessarily need to bring that one on concurrently. I think that Liz is perfectly capable of mentoring a lower level project manager, and sort of getting somebody acclimated as to whatever projects will be specific at whatever point in time someone starts anyway. But that is the long-term succession plan for that in a relatively short period.
So I don't know that it's absolutely true, but one could say Liz owes everything that she knows to Rick. Or she's learned everything that she's learned from Rick.
Jeff.
Yeah, let me finish.
Jeff is fairly heavily involved.
Jeff and Rick were amazingly open and generous people with their knowledge. And so she's been very, very fortunate. And
So that's regarding what she knows, but she doesn't know everything he knows.
right. And I don't, and there,
That's something we can handle on a retired annuitant basis.
potentially, but I don't know that, that there's a necessity, to in-house know everything that Rick knows. Especially if your general manager is going to be an experienced PE. They can.
I seem to remember reading that he was responsible for more than a couple wastewater systems,
Seven,
incorporated county.
four wastewater and 3 water.
Okay.
So,
There ought to be some mentoring capability
Sure.
there too.
sure. And like I said, we're sort of moving into our regular maintenance CIP type, and she's completely familiar with that. So our large project is quite a bit behind us.
Is there anything comparable, even half of TMDL that we see on the horizon
I'd
as a
have,
single project?
I'd have to consult with Rick and Liz, but not that I'm aware of.
No, but in a case like that, you did have something that was comparable to TMDL or something that was bigger. You always do have the option to have an outside firm come in. It's the project.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Sure.
That's what we did when we did the treatment plant
97.
rebuild, and we had outside project management. And it wasn't, they weren't connected with the contractor. They were outside of that. I think it was Harris that did the management.
Like construction manager?
And they had an on-site construction manager. They basically did what Rick did, but you're not tied up with the overhead
Sure.
when you don't have those projects.
Yeah, you buy it by the drink,
Yeah.
of course, yeah. And
And that was,
Mr. Ulrich is a construction manager.
And if you,
He could help us with that, I'm
Right.
sure.
I'm sure if you remember, we recently did a budget adjustment to our professional services budget line item specifically for that, because that demand has grown. And with Liz's other priority areas, in Jeff's absence, we started to do that already. And we knew that was going to happen eventually as something that is reasonable for a small district when they don't have a RIC. And so we had anticipated that well in advance. So
I
that's,
feel like you've gotten enough from the committee to go off and grind for a week and then come back in 2 weeks and look at some of this.
There actually is one more succession plan. Maybe we're not ready to talk about it in detail, but Bradshaw says he's retiring in 2 to 5 years.
so we have that underway.
An offer made to the fellow who's a great four. That may take care of itself, but it doesn't. We'll have to talk about that.
That is the intention, is that is part of the succession planning that we already have in place. And that's, like I said, the regulatory ones are high priority. So we hope that by the time that time comes, we'll have solved that problem as perfectly as possible. If this particular candidate does not work out, we will go out for recruitment one more time, hopefully on an adjusted salary schedule, and should be, I can't imagine we wouldn't be more successful and we'd be able to immediately sort of plan again. So I think we know what we need to do on that one.
With a TPO 4 and 5 on the chart and you farther up the chart, Does that mean you're already a TPO 99 or whatever?
Yeah, I'm the CPO. So I'll just maintain that status till such time as we get somebody who's qualified to kind of take the reins. Just had a recent conversation with my 16-year-old daughter about her college plans, so could be another 6 or 7 years for me.
Uh-oh.
They sound something like my daughter.
Oh my God.
Your cash flow creeping into the
Yeah.
conversation, yes.
Gonna pay for that. Well, yeah, he is.
Yeah, exactly. Does it cost money?
Well, here's the reason I worked a few years longer than I wanted to.
Yeah, it seems to be par for the course these days. People are going a little bit longer, so.
For me, it was putting two through Princeton with only 1 year of overlap. So every year it was, how are we gonna get through the next year?
Oh.
We did. They're both
You haven't been.
more successful than I have ever been, which is just what you want.
Exactly.
It's insanely successful family.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, that is.
We need to talk about.
Good. Meet your patience.
Okay. Reports, committee member reports. Anything to add to the general wealth of knowledge?
Nothing for me.
I have nothing.
That's all I have to say. How about the general manager?
Yeah, real quick,
Pearls from your lips based on your 6 hours.
okay, I do want to reiterate what Director Kintosh said, that hiring good people, I think, is going to be the future. I think that good people have a couple of things that they value. I think they value their time. I think that they value some flexibility. Typically, if you have good people, they're self-motivated and you can do that. I also think good people typically delay gratification. One of those things I think you'll often find is good people are the types of people that often save for retirement, and they may find that beneficial. The managing various work schedules, it is doable, and I think the competition is doing it, whether it's 410s or 980s. I think that is important for a lot of folks. What else did I have in there? It was a big one. Oh, it's just a little aside. I did have one split second to meet with Liz today, and she shared with me some of her goals, and I have some personal stuff that allowed me to sit down and take the PE exam pretty successfully the first time, and I've already set aside sharing that information with Liz. I'm going to go and dig through my boxes, and I've got some 20-year-old bins that she can or binders that she can go through. Yeah, dust off, and it's worked for other people that have used them. So. That's it for me.
Well, I think that's it then. At 6:12, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Very much.